July 16, 1969, the crew of Apollo 11 was launched into space aboard a Saturn V rocket from Kennedy Space Center in Florida near Cape Canaveral. It was a historic moment. Humanity was about to set foot on the surface of the moon. The mission launched exactly on schedule. The event was broadcast live on television in 33 countries across 6 continents. All 3 stages of the launch vehicle performed nominally during liftoff. 11 minutes and 42 seconds after launch, Apollo 11 reached a velocity of 7.79 kilometers per second and entered a nearly circular Earth orbit at an altitude of 190.8 kilometers. After about 1.5 orbits while passing over the Pacific Ocean, the third stage engine was fired for 5 minutes and 47 seconds. Apollo 11 accelerated to nearly escape velocity, 10.84 kilometers per second, and was placed on a trajectory toward the moon. The spacecraft entered lunar orbit approximately 76 hours after launch. Interestingly, in preparation for the mission, the astronauts spent hundreds of hours in simulators practicing both normal and emergency scenarios, but no one was prepared for the situation we're about to discuss in this video. On July 20th, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Buzz Aldrin transferred into the lunar module Eagle, activated and checked all its systems, and deployed the landing gear. After landing, Armstrong reported to Earth,
"Houston, Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed."
Charles Duke, momentarily overwhelmed, replied,
"Roger, Tranquility. We copy you on the ground. You got a bunch of guys about to turn blue. We're breathing again. Thanks a lot."
During the first 2 hours on the moon, Armstrong and Aldrin were busy simulating a pre-launch checklist in case an early abort became necessary. At 109 hours, 24 minutes, and 20 seconds into the mission, Armstrong stepped onto the lunar surface with his left foot and said,
"It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind."
This was the first photograph taken by Neil Armstrong after stepping onto the moon. The white bag in the foreground is a trash bag. Let's take a look at a few more photos taken by the astronauts during their time on the moon. About 15 minutes after Armstrong's first step, Aldrin began descending from the module. Armstrong stood nearby, guiding him and taking photographs. They collected lunar samples, took pictures, communicated with Earth, planted the U.S. flag, and left their footprints on the moon. An interesting fact, the footprints left by astronauts on the moon remain there indefinitely because the moon has no atmosphere. That's how we remember the Apollo 11 mission. But years later, rumors began to emerge that the astronauts saw something strange on the moon. According to some theories, during the Apollo 11 mission, Armstrong allegedly reported unidentified objects. Some claim he saw lights at the edge of a crater. Others say that radio communication was temporarily cut off, and that something happened at that moment that was never officially disclosed. Here is a version of the alleged transcript attributed to Armstrong and Aldrin, widely circulated in various forms. "What are those? What are those? Can you tell us what they are? My God, we won't be believed. We're here, we're safe, but we have visitors. I'm telling you, there are other spacecraft here, lined up along the edge of the crater." However, there were also real communications heard by millions of people watching on black and white televisions as NASA broadcast the moon landing live. At one point, the astronauts asked Houston, "Where is the S-4B?" The S-4B was the third stage of the rocket that sent them toward the moon. A few minutes later, Mission Control replied, "The S-4B is about 11,000 kilometers away." At first glance, it seemed like a routine navigation question, but later, Buzz Aldrin explained, "We observed a large object at some distance from us through the window. It had a ring-like shape and was moving along an elliptical trajectory. Collins looked at it through a telescope. It was definitely not our spacecraft." After the response from Earth, it became clear that it wasn't the S-4B stage either. The astronauts allegedly chose not to report this observation immediately, deciding instead to mention it later during a confidential debriefing. However, no official NASA records confirm these claims. In reality, most of these stories are rumors and interpretations. Scientists suggest that the strange lights could have been reflections, space debris, or parts of the spacecraft. And the mission recordings are thoroughly documented. But one question remains. If we have only been to the moon a few times, are we sure we've seen everything there?